Welcome to Open Book. Welcome to the Loft Literary Center. My name is Bao Phi. I'm an Associate Program Director here at the Loft. The Loft is one of the nation's leading literary arts organizations. We offer classes for adults and youth, awards, mentorships, conferences, spoken word performances, and readings of all kinds. If you're interested in literature, please visit our website at www.loft.org for more information. And we have all types of free information you can get on the table outside, as well as the kiosks. And on a personal note, I've worked at the Loft for 14 years, and just once, I hope that an outspoken progressive NFL player who also plays World of Warcraft would emerge from a magical land ruled by sparkling ponies and write a book and then read it here at the Loft while flanked by grown-ass adults in Star Wars uniforms. So, you know, we would like to joke that this all kind of fell into our laps, but actually this event took a lot of coordination and a lot of work. So very quickly, we would like to thank everyone at the Loft, especially Jared Santek. Yes, thank you. For doing all the logistical work and getting Chris here, working with the agents, and Lucas Schultz also for managing this whole thing, figuring out where everybody's gonna go. Thank you, Lucas. And also all the volunteers and Loft staff who are here today doing everything from taking photos, to lifting chairs and setting them up. So thank you all, Lofty folks. Thanks to Morgan and Fiona at Little Brown and Company. Thanks to Matt Kesson and R. Vincent Moniz Jr. And thanks to Browntown for doing all this great video work. And what's up, Overflow Room? How y'all doing? I see you. What's up? It's cool. Okay. Just a couple of housekeeping things. After Chris signs, we will look for Loft folks. We will direct you into this room, and we'll give you a Post-it note to write your name. And Chris is being super generous with his time, so please be respectful of that. Recognize that there's probably 300 people here, so don't ask him to sign like 50 pieces of your Vikings underwear or whatever. Just like, you know, just be considerate of the space and all the other fans who are here. There's no photos during the event, but you can take pictures with Chris and folks afterwards, okay? Also, some of you might have glassware and beers from JJ's. We've set up, if you could kind of handle that yourself, like grown adults, and we have set up a station right outside the doors, right, Lucas? Where you can drop those off kind of safely, okay? I think that's it. All right, cool. It's so great for you all to be here for literature. Thank you for being here. All right, so Chris Kluwe grew up in Southern California among a colony of wild chinchillas. And he didn't learn how to communicate outside of barking and howling until he was about 14 years old. He has played football in the NFL and still does, once wrestled a bear for a pot of gold, and lies occasionally. He is also the eternal disappointment of his mother, who just can't understand why he hasn't cured cancer yet. Now, Jim Anderson of the Star Tribune writes of Kluwe and his book, every once in a while, the rare athlete comes along who unabashedly uses his high visibility platform to further causes far beyond sports. And they have done so at their own peril. The typical reward for defying the sacred convention of athlete as benign idol was scorn. We like our athletes seen and not heard, especially when it comes to politics. Well, we here at the Loft are really glad to hear and see Chris, and we're glad to host Chris Kluwe's release of his Beautifully Unique Sparkleponies. So, Minnesota, please welcome Chris Kluwe.
The question is, how many book signings have you seen with an escort of the 501st? And remember, this is the book signing you are looking for. But yeah, thank you guys for escorting me out and making sure I was not abducted by rebels. I appreciate that. It's they're everywhere. And thank you everyone for coming out. I really appreciate it. Generally what I do is give kind of a quick background of myself, where you might know me from, and then I do question and answer because I like talking with people instead of talking at people. It's more fun that way. So when we get to that part, please don't be afraid to ask questions, and it can be anything at all. So I am Chris Kluwe, and I played for the Vikings for 8 years. A couple people here with the jerseys, thank you. And I got involved with Minnesotans for Marriage Equality last year to help defeat the constitutional amendment here. And during that time, I wrote a letter to one Delegate Burns. Mr. Burns, yeah, excellent. And that kind of catapulted my writing voice, I guess, onto the national stage. And after that, I had probably 3 or 4 book publishers say, you should write a book. And I was like, well, no, I'm busy with football right now. Maybe after the season's done. And then another 3 or 4 publishers were like, you should write a book. I was like, okay, these are the people in charge of books. It'd be like if 7 or 8 football teams said, you should play football. So at that point, I was like, okay, yeah, maybe I should write a book. And then they were like, well, what kind of book do you want to write? I was like, well, I don't want to write the autobiographical football story because everyone writes that book. And that's it can be an okay book, but to me, that's a boring book. I want to write an exciting book. And so I wrote Beautifully Unique Sparkleponies, which is a collection of essays and short stories that really is, I like to describe it as a snapshot into my mind. So buyer beware. It's you're in for some dark times in there. But one of the underlying ideas in the book is the idea of rational empathy, the idea that treating other people the way you would like to be treated is the cornerstone of any stable society. Because if you don't have equality, you have different groups fighting against each other. You have conflict, and that brings societies down. If you look at the historical record, 100% of civilizations have failed. There is yet to be a civilization that has withstood the test of time, and that's they've either oppressed their own groups within, or they've sought out conflict without, trying to, take something from someone else. And if we as a species, if we as a society, if we want to break that pattern, we have to realize that that pattern exists and what we have to do to change it, which means that we have to recognize that if we aren't all free to live our lives, then we're going to keep having those conflicts. We're going to keep having those destructive patterns of societies crumbling down. And so that was one thing I wanted to point out in the book is this idea that we need equality. We need true equality. We need people to be able to live their own lives without fear of oppression, no matter what that happens to be. And if you wouldn't want someone doing something to you, then don't do it to someone else. That's it's a simple thought. So, yeah. That's the book. That's pretty much all I have. Like I said, I like to keep it short and sweet, and I really, Q&A is really where I like to do this, because that way you guys get to know what you want to know. And again, I'm not talking at you, because when I was in these kind of meetings for school and football, I hate being talked at. It sucks. You're just sitting there and someone's like, blah, 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 blah. So questions? Anyone have any questions? Any at all?
I'm glad that you were able to get another job.
Oh, thank you.
I'm following Brandon very carefully, but I know he lost his job.
Yeah.
Did he get another job?
No, I think he's transferring into kind of a post-football career right now. He was on like his 13th or 14th year, so yeah.
So what do you think is going to happen when an NFL player finally comes
I think it's going to be a media attention event for probably a couple weeks or so. But then after that time, that initial, kind of surge of attention, that will die down, and people will say, well, can that player play? Can he catch touchdowns? Can he throw passes? Can he tackle someone? And really it becomes, are you able to play football? Can you play out on the field, which is the way it should be? And we need that one person, or however many people it happens to be, to take that first step to show everyone else that, you can do this. And at the same time, though, I don't want to force anyone into doing that, because that's a very tough choice to make. I mean, you're talking about a profession that 1% of 1% of the people who ever play football will play in the NFL. And to risk giving that up, when it's such a short career anyways, that can be very, very hard to do. So I don't want to force anyone into doing it, but I want to create an environment where when someone does decide to come out, they know that they have help. They know that they have people supporting them, so that it won't be as hard as it otherwise could be. So, right. Oh, thank you. In the back.
Could you share with us those 5 minutes before you click send?
Yeah, it's So for the letter, I pretty much just wrote it, sent it off. That's so I like to. My writing style was developed on the World of Warcraft Realm forums, which are, if anyone's ever been there, it is a den of sin and iniquity, the likes of which you will not see anywhere else in the entire galaxy. I think I mangled the quote a little bit, but you get the idea. It's it's an environment where, in order to be heard in the online forums that people really don't want you to be heard in, you have to develop a writing style that is both logical, rational, and has something that sets it apart. And for me, that was inventive swearing. So when I wrote the letter, to me, this is how I would talk. This is what gets the point across, because you remember the swear words. You remember lustful cock monster. The shirt in the front. That sticks in your mind, and then you remember the point that came behind it, which is that, why does it matter what other people are doing with their lives? Why don't you worry about your own life? Why don't we all worry about our own life and let people have the freedom to live their own lives? And that to me is the essence of good writing, of good speaking, is being able to make that point and having people remember it. And that's, it can be tough to do, but for me, the way I found was, I'm going to make up swear words. Because I personally happen to like it too. So, all right, in the back.
Tell us a little bit about what's next for you.
Mm-hmm.
You're going on a book tour. What's your new job like?
So I'm on the book tour right now. Had to slot it in during kind of the dead month of the football season, because there's not a lot going on in the NFL right now. It's except for people getting arrested, which is stupid. But yeah, so for me, it's book tour stuff right now, and then once the season starts, it's solely football, because that, at that point, that's my job. That's what I have to focus on. And I'm hoping to play football for, another 4 to 5 years, show that I can still play at a high level. And after that, I'll probably keep writing. I'm working on a science fiction trilogy with a friend of mine, so that'll hopefully be pretty cool. I'd like to think we have some good ideas there. And I've read almost like every science fiction fantasy book in existence, so I can steal from a lot of different people. But yeah, no, just kind of, living with my kids, playing football, writing books, and taking life one day at a time. That's enjoying it. So yeah.
Were you ever able to have any positive contact with the gentleman you wrote the letter to in the first place?
No, Mr. Delegate Burns. Yeah, it's I never actually heard from him. The only contact I had with the state of Maryland was the official commendation they sent thanking me for my work in advancing equality. So I figured that pretty much showed Delegate Burns kind of where everyone else was standing on the issue. So, and I noticed he's not rerunning for his seat this year. Shocking. So yeah, all right, yeah.
This young lady here wanted to know where sparkle ponies come from.
Where sparkle ponies come from? There's a rainbow cloud high up in the sky. And then every so often, enough matter clumps together and a sparkle pony emerges. A beautiful coruscating light. It's really cool. Actually, it just kind of came to me. I have a very strange imagination. So yeah, sparkle ponies, they come from your imagination. All right, other questions? Yeah.
I'm just wondering if you get a lot of people that that you're gay or that you don't have a
Mm-hmm.
family, and then what kind of response you receive when they find out that you do have a family?
Yeah, I've actually gotten that quite a bit. Sometimes from people who are like, oh, he supports gay rights, he must be gay. So, most of the time from people who are like, so you want to go out? It's which to me is flattering because that's kind of cool to see. But at the same time, like, I'm happily married to my wife. We have 2 wonderful daughters, and that's my family. And that was the other thing I want to show is that you just because you support someone's right to live their life, doesn't necessarily mean you are that person, and that can go for anything. We can all stand up for equality. Even though we're all very different people, we all have very different experiences. We've all lived our lives in very different ways. But at the end of it, if you're free to live your own life and you want that freedom, then everyone else has to have that freedom as well. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So yeah, I've gotten the question before, and usually I just laugh at it because I'm happy with who I am. So that's all I need. So yeah.
Hey, after you are done with football and writing and family, what would you think about going into politics?
I get that question every time. It's unfortunately, I don't think I would want to go into politics simply because of the fact that right now our political system is very broken in terms of the money it requires to run for office and how beholden you are to people who give you that money. And then the other problem is that you can influence our political system more by being outside of it, whether that's through a super PAC or writing or being a commentator or whatever. That will actually create more change than if you are a single person inside it, which is not the sign of a healthy society. So in order to fix that, we have to get to a point where enough people run for office with the sole purpose of limiting their own power. If you know anything at all about human nature, good luck with that one. So yeah, I mean, it unfortunately, I think we're going to have to get to a point where things get bad enough that enough people realize we can't let this go on. We can't have this happening and consider ourselves a stable society because you see it right now, the partisanship in Congress and in our government is Congress's approval ratings at like 13%. That's not a good sign. Like that's not a good government. and so we keep electing the same people over and over and over, and we regard political service as a job, not as a service. If you're a public servant, you're there to help other people. You're not there to make money and become a lobbyist. That's not what a successful society does, but that's where we're at. And until enough people say we've had enough, we don't want this anymore, then we're just going to keep getting the same thing over and over. So we have to decide we want to change before we can actually change. So in the back.
Would you repeat the questions from the overflow room?
Yes. All right. So, overflow room, you could probably grab the general statement of what I was being asked. I think the only one that probably didn't make sense was where does Sparkleponies come from? And they come from rainbow clouds. So, yeah. All right, next question. Yeah.
On a personal note, I'd like to say that not for the first time the Vikings have broken my heart.
I'm sorry.
You truly missed.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I saw a post saying that Tripping and Chris is looking for a reverse of space, and I'm wondering if that gives us a little bit of hope that we might see you in the state every once in a while.
So the question is, will you see me back in the state? And the answer is, I will try and get back as much as possible, because I have been here 8.5 years. I've come to enjoy the state, though not the winters so much. The winters might be in California for those, but no, I have the band here. I have friends here. I have things here that I would like to continue doing, and so that's definitely something that I want to pursue. Is coming back for the band, for doing book signings and school talks and things like that, just to to be around because it is a great state. It's Minnesota and. Obvious audience pandering right there. It's but no, it's cool to be here. I enjoy being here. So yes, I'm going to try and get back as much as possible. Next question.
What do you think about the Supreme Court's?
So the question was, what did I think about the Supreme Court's decision? DOMA, they got right, and you could tell because Scalia was super pissed about it. That one was good because it establishes federal rights for same-sex couples on the federal level. Prop 8 they punted on. They had a chance to make a change that would help a lot of people, but they decided not to because for whatever reason they are ignoring prior precedent set in Loving v. Virginia that marriage is a human right. You can't take it away. And I don't know how they haven't figured that out yet because these are the arbiters of our legal system. These are supposed to be the smartest judicial minds that we have. And it's like you already have this case. It tells you what to do. You can make people get married. It's right there. And so unfortunately I think it's something we're going to have to pursue at the state level, for a while longer until the older Supreme Court justices die off and we finally get Scalia out of there. It's and that actually speaks to a deeper problem is the fact that our Supreme Court is a partisan court and it's not a neutral court. You have justices on both sides that are there leaning for their party influences for who appointed them, and that's not the basis of a sound legal system. You have to have equality, and if you don't have law. You have people with sticks telling other people what to do. That's not justice. So we need to, again, we need to hold our elected representatives accountable for that. We need to say, we're tired of fighting over partisan differences. Get together and fix things. That's what a government does, is it makes decisions that fix things for people. And the only way you can fix that is if everyone has the same rights, everyone has the same opportunities. And we're not getting there yet. So yeah.
What was your reaction to the NBA player that came out,
Mm-hmm.
and then you hear and say some of your football colleagues?
Okay, so the question was, what was my reaction to Jason Collins coming out, and did I hear anything from football colleagues? My reaction was that's awesome, because Jason is finally able to be who he is. He doesn't have to worry about hiding himself when he's out on the field, or when he's out on the court. Obviously, basketball fan here. But no, and one thing really struck me from the piece he wrote for SI was the fact that he said for the past 33 years, I feel like I've been baking in an oven. And as someone who plays at a professional level, you have to be able to devote 100% of your focus in order to play at your best. And if you're worried about someone discovering who you are, then you're not playing at 100% focus, and you're not able to play at your best. So my main thing is when these coaches are worried about distractions, when front office is worried about distractions, I respond with, think about how much better your players would play, because there are gay players on teams. Simple statistics says there are gay players on over half of NFL football teams. And that's going with a 1% of the population being gay. and it's really, how much better would your team be if you allowed guys to be themselves, if they didn't have to worry about hiding, who they were. And again, that affects your team. And I think, teammates realize that. We're there to win football games. That's what we're there for. The second part of the question, I haven't heard a lot from football colleagues in terms of, someone coming up to me and saying, hey, I'm gay, I'm thinking of coming out. Really, I don't go looking for it because I'm there to play football. If someone wants to come up, I'm more than happy to talk with them. But it's more, to me, I like the freedom to live my life, and that's what I want to extend to other people, the freedom to live their lives. I don't want anyone to have to worry about who they are when it comes to, choosing what they do. And so, I've had a lot of football players come up and say, thanks for writing the letter, because it's, they thought it was the right thing to do. And I think you're seeing that now in the NFL. As younger generations come up, they're raised in an environment that's more tolerant and more respectful, and they understand, they have gay friends, they have gay teammates, they have gay family members, and they know a gay person. And they know what it's like when that person isn't able to benefit under the same laws that everyone else is. They see it, and that changes. That changes people. I mean, you look at the Republican legislators who all of a sudden, a family member comes out as gay, and then, I'm going to backtrack on my decisions. It's like you now have that personal connection to someone. You realize how much that hurts their life. And I mean, I wish more people would realize that you don't necessarily have to have that personal connection to a person. You just have to be able to put yourself in that person's shoes and realize this is harming someone's life. So yeah, that was kind of winding and off on some tangents. Hopefully I answered the question. Other questions? Oh, we have one in the back.
Is the NFL particularly difficult for people with locker room language and stuff outside of the field, off the field? Is it tough for people that to want to come out?
So the question is the locker room atmosphere tough for players, thinking of coming out, either language or behavior? I'd say it can be, because there are guys who use gay slurs unknowingly or unthinkingly, and the main thing is that when you educate them, then they realize, hey, this is hurting someone else. The vast majority of guys in the NFL who use gay slurs casually, they do it because that's either the culture they were raised in, or they don't understand the impact it has on someone else. And once you help them realize that this is affecting someone else's life, they're like, well, okay, I'm going to stop doing that because that's messed up. And there's so many other swear words out there you can use. There's tons of them. So yeah, it really is just a matter of education, and like when you saw with Chris Kluwe when he made his comments before the Super Bowl, everyone kind of jumped on him because they're like, hey, wait a minute, that's not cool. And a month later, he's working with I think it was Trevor's project in San Francisco, learning why this isn't a good thing for him to be doing, and hopefully he's learned from that and understands now that those words have an impact, and you don't have to say stuff like that. It's not, ignorance is something that can be helped. Now, willful ignorance, on the other hand, that drives me crazy. That's please, no willful ignorance, please. That's so yeah.
Given the message of your book and how we treat other people,
Mm-hmm.
and the events of what happened the past week with Aaron Hernandez.
Mm-hmm.
Does something like that, can that be seen in the locker room? Like some guys in a bad situation, or I mean, you seem like such a. I mean, when I saw him standing there, I saw a 23-year-old kid.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what the heck?
Yeah.
And it was really sad.
Yep. It's so.
I'm just your perspective of that.
Okay.
And
Yes. So the question is, so stuff like Aaron Hernandez, and I think more in general, just why do football players go bad, and can you kind of see that coming? And the thing is that you can kind of get warning indicators, but I don't think anyone ever saw anything like that coming, because you look at any other murder case, and most of the time people are like, oh, he was a great neighbor, I had no idea. He was the quiet, silent type that he took care of his azaleas, and that was it. But no, it's the problem is in the NFL is you have guys who may be coming from a rougher background, and all of a sudden they have a lot of resources available to them, a lot of free time, and they don't understand that now their actions have consequences. Now you have a lot of people watching you, and you have the ability to get into a lot of trouble because you have that much money. And the thing that's really hard is you may have grown up with a bunch of friends. These are the people you grew up with. These are the people who helped you with tough times, but you might have to leave them behind because they might drag you down into some place where you're not going to have your job anymore. You're not going to be employed in the NFL anymore. And that's a very tough decision for people to make, is that I feel like I'm abandoning my friends. But when you look at it, you also have to say, if these were really my friends, would they want to put me in a situation where I am risking everything I have in order to be with them? And I don't think true friends are really going to do that to you. That's more someone who wants to use you to try and get something for you. So that the NFL does a great job of educating guys, both on financial security and on influences in your life. So the information is there. It's just a matter of, do guys listen to it or not? And unfortunately, some guys don't listen. Yep.
I already read the Who is John Galt?
Okay.
Chapter. First of all, comment, that's really beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Where do you think you got this from? Like you were saying, the rational empathy. Where do you think you got that from versus the Ayn Rand?
So the question was, where did I get rational empathy as opposed to being an Ayn Rand sociopath? No disrespect to Ayn Rand sociopaths out there. It's sure you're lovely people. I think honestly where I got it is the way my parents raised me was to treat other people the way you would like to be treated, and I wasn't perfect as a kid. I made fun of other kids. I got into fights. I treated other people poorly. But as I grew up, I realized that if I was in that situation on the other side, that I wouldn't want that happening to me. And so, why am I doing it to someone else? And not to be a total nerd, but I am a total nerd. I think I think a lot of that also came from reading a lot of science fiction and fantasy, because the utopian ideal is the cornerstone of almost every single science fiction fantasy book there is out there. And it's this idea that we can get to a better place. We just have to make the right actions to get there. We have to care about other people, and we have to help them live their lives better. And really, that's something I think a lot of people could learn is this idea that life is short, brutish, and nasty, but it doesn't have to be that way. We can help each other. We can make the world a better place. It just requires you putting yourself in someone else's shoes and understanding why a course of action is harmful. And for people, that's tough to do. We're not generally equipped to do that. We have to make a conscious choice to do that. And we have to make that choice. We have to. So.
What do you think about the Redskins team name and why the team seemed to like the derogatory?
Yeah. So the question is, what do I think about the Redskins team name, and why they can't let it go? That's a tough one because I'm currently employed by the NFL, but I will say the team does need to change its name because it is a derogatory term, and even if you are, it's. Thank you. It's simple logic. It is everyone recognizes it as a derogatory term. And as fans, you may have a connection to the team, but if your connection to the team depends on bringing someone else down and, making fun of who they are, that's not a really good connection to have. You should be cheering for your team because of how the players play and how the team does, not because of what the team name is, especially when the team name represents something that is discriminatory in nature. And so I think the main resistance is due to the fact that monetarily it's going to be a merchandise hit if they change the name. That's, from a business perspective, that's going to cost Daniel Snyder quite a bit of money. But he needs to realize that as a society, if we continue to uphold ideas that discrimination is okay, we're going to get to the point where money doesn't matter because people are hitting each other with sticks trying to get food and water. It's at that point, who cares how many billions you have in the bank when people are running riot in the streets? It's that underlying idea that you have to have a stable society if you want things like entertainment to continue happening. So yeah, I think the team name should be changed. All right, right there. Favorite book? Oh man, it is. Okay, so my favorite book. This is a multi-part explanation. My favorite book is Ender's Game, and I really wish Orson Scott Card had paid attention to what he wrote about. Because the reason I love Ender's Game is it's a great empathic novel about, Ender is, that's what makes him a great general, is he's able to put himself into, the alien's shoes. He's able to become someone else so completely that he knows everything they can do. And it's that struggle within himself. He loves his enemy and he's struggling, why do I have to kill this enemy? Why can't we just get along? And then you look at what Orson Scott Card does, and he's a main contributor to Nom. It's like, how do you rationalize that? Like, how do you justify discriminating against an entire group of people when you wrote this wonderful book on what it means to identify with someone else so completely that your only choice is to love them? Like, it doesn't make sense in my head. So it's a great book. I really enjoy reading it. I love reading it over and over. But at the same time, it's one of those books where I really wish the author had taken his own advice, that he had paid attention to what he had written. So. I also like Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. That's a really, really good book. Yeah.
Considering your entourage, I have to ask you, what are your hopes for the next Star Wars film?
Ooh, hopes. Well, they are staring. My first hope has already been answered in that George Lucas is not involved. That's so that one's good. My second hope is that they get back to the storytelling of 4, 5, and 6 as opposed to the spectacle of 1, 2, and 3. Because when you look at the story of 4, 5, and 6, it's a good story. It's the hero's journey. It's Joseph Campbell. It is something that means something. 1, 2, and 3 don't mean anything. They're flashy lights and CGI and thinly veiled racism. It's it's really not a good look for the Star Wars universe. And so that's something it's so hard to find in movies these days, is a good story, something that actually means something. And I think that's why Episode 5 is one of the great movies of all time, because it is a dark movie. The rebellion is doing very poorly, and it actually means something. You're like, okay, they have to do something if they want to win this, because that's what the world is like sometimes. You have complex characters who are motivated by many different things, and you have to work at it if you want the happy ending. So hopefully they move more in that direction. So, sorry, for the people in the overflow room, the question was, what do you want to see in the next Star Wars movies? that was a little late. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, we know marriage equality. What are some of your other passions that you support?
Other passions, really the main passion I support is human equality, human rights. The question was, what are, we know about your passion for marriage equality, what other passions do you support? And for me, marriage equality is really a subset of human equality, of treating other people the way you'd like to be treated. Because as a history and poli-sci major, like I said before, you look at every single society in history and they've all failed because they don't treat their citizens with equality. And again, if we don't recognize that, we're going to keep treading the same path over and over and over. We're going to keep making the same mistakes over and over and over, and we're going to keep collapsing as civilizations over and over and over. There's a 100% failure rate as a society. I mean, you can't argue with it. It's right there in the history books. And we need to realize as a species, we can't keep doing the same thing over and over and expect different results. That's insanity. We don't want to be a species of lunatics. And so, we have to understand that basic human rights, having the freedom to live your own life, that has to be the cornerstone of a successful society. So, yeah.
I know I really appreciate the way you got involved with Minnesota United. It was for volunteering. It was really energizing when we hear you on the radio.
Oh, thank you.
So I'm curious, did you have previous experience in an activist role? Did you kind of know what you were getting into? What was it like to get engaged with the campaign? Is this something you do again?
Yeah. So the question was, did I have any experience with activism before getting involved with Minnesotans United, and then would I do it again? The answer to the first part is no. I had no idea what I was getting into. I'd never. I'd never done any activist work before, and to me, honestly, when I was in college, I really got kind of turned off activism, because at UCLA, there would always be a group of people protesting at the corner near the federal building on Wilshire, and you'd go up and ask them what they were protesting about, and they'd be like, I don't know, I'm just here, I'm waving a sign around. I'm like, well, what's the point? Like, if you're gonna protest something, you need to believe in that. You have to have a passion for it. And so for me, I just saw this, people were doing it because it was the cool thing to do, not because they actually felt anything about it. And that doesn't lead to anything successful, because you don't have the drive to sustain it and carry it through. And so when I got involved with MN United, it was really cool seeing how everyone was working together to defeat this amendment. And for me, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. I'm going to give you everything I have. And so, whatever they asked me to do, that's what I would do, because I wanted to defeat this amendment. Like, I did not want it to pass. And so if you don't do your best, if you don't try everything you can possibly try, how do you know, if you could have made a difference or not? Because you'll always have that nagging suspicion in your mind that maybe I could have done a little bit more. Maybe I could have helped out a little bit more, and maybe that would have made a difference. And I would prefer not to have that nagging suspicion in my mind. So yeah, and for future activism, I'm going to keep writing, keep speaking out. My main thing has always been, if I see bullshit or hypocrisy, I'm going to call it out. That's that's just who I am. So.
And you're for human rights. Would that be something you'd ever get interested in, or what's like your point of view on that?
Yeah, so the question is about bullying, and would I be involved with that? And the answer is yes. I mean, that is a part of human rights. And that was one of the main things I wanted to show with the amendment, was the fact that establishing something like this into the state's constitution legitimizes kids being bullied in school, which legitimizes when kids commit suicide, which is something a stable society has to avoid. You cannot have your future generations killing themselves because their life sucks. That's not a good sign for your society. So really, anything that involves bullying, you need to make people realize that they wouldn't want to be bullied. Why are you bullying someone else? Again, it's basic empathy. Don't do to other people what you wouldn't want done to yourself. And that's something, you know, we need to be made aware of, because it's a problem. You know, there is problems with bullying, but if we work at it, if we make people aware, then you know, we can keep helping to fix that. So, yeah.
You mentioned a couple of things. One is that all civilizations have collapsed.
Mm-hmm.
And second, this passion you have for science fiction.
Uh-huh.
Like Star Trek.
Right.
And my question to you is, when you think about that, are you actually optimistic that that will happen?
So the question is, am I optimistic that we will ever have a stable society that stands the test of time, like Star Trek or something similar? And I don't know. I mean, I would love to see that world. I'm going to try to do everything possible that I can to bring about that world. But the problem is that it's so much bigger than one person. It has to be the vast majority of the human species realizing that if we don't work together to get off this planet, if we don't realize that species-level extinction events occur very regularly on the geologic timescale, then at some point a meteor will come down or a supervolcano will explode, and we'll be like the dinosaurs wandering through the Mesozoic. We'll have no idea what just hit us, and that'll be it. we'll be a brief twinkle on some alien planet's astronomer's eye. That's, you know, that will be the end. And the problem with that thinking for a lot of people is that it's very hard to see past the day that's in front of you. You know, it's very hard to think of long-term consequences, because we're not really equipped to think of long-term consequences as a species. We're equipped to think about our immediate tribal structure, our family, and how we can keep that intact. And we have to consciously work to change that. We have to realize we're all in this together, and that if we don't all work together, eventually there's going to be none of us left. So it's really taking the long-term view and making sure that the choices we make now aren't affecting our children in negative ways. They aren't affecting our children's children in negative ways, and that we are working together and not, you know, not fighting against each other. So, yeah.
With your national attention that you gathered and everything, all of a sudden everybody in the country knew that you were just a punter that, you know.
Yeah.
And so I've seen you appear on like the Colbert Report, all the way to like the Nerdist podcast. Who did you geek out most about getting to meet because of that?
It's a good question. So the question was, who did I geek out the most about getting to meet? And I gotta say, it's been everyone. I mean, I love talking to people and you know, getting different experiences and points of view, because the world is such an amazingly huge place, and there's so many different people in it that, you know, you can learn so much just from talking to other people. And one of the things I actually tweeted when I was driving my car back is that don't tweet and drive, by the way, that's dangerous. One of the things, you know, I notice is that everyone should take a trip across the United States at least once in their life, just to get a sense of scale of how big this country is, and then realize that this country is just one country among many in the entire world. I mean, there's so many different perspectives out there. And so, like, I loved being on the Nerdist. I loved being on Colbert. That was a lot of fun. You know, I love being on Conan. I love being on every single show that I've been on, because I get to talk with people and understand their point of view. And I mean, that to me is the essence of communication, of being a social creature, is exchanging information with other people and realizing that other people do have points of view. And, you know, the world is not just about you. Sorry, Ayn Rand sociopaths. It's about everyone else in it. So, yeah. And so, but by far the best highlight is the 501st. That's right there. Yeah.
I was just curious as to whether or not you feel we're riding a wave of momentum, and how close you think we are to some of these landmark events that we've all been talking about. An NFL player coming out, so we don't have to worry about talking about it anymore. Government going through a big change. How closely you follow the Wendy Davis stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like we're kind of starting to push in that direction. It's happening really, really fast. If you think about where we were a year ago, based on what we're celebrating here today. Do you think that wave of momentum is carrying through a lot of other aspects of life?
Yeah. So the question is, do I think the wave of momentum from same-sex rights to what was it, to like Wendy Davis, to basically the way we're changing society to be more tolerant, is that is that moving forward at a more rapid pace than it has been before, right? That's essentially, okay.
Do you feel like that is going to be kind of a catalyst for
Mhm.
change when we're talking about the government and a change when we're talking about popular culture such as professionals?
Okay, and will that act as a catalyst for change in government and popular culture and sports? I think it can act as a catalyst. The problem is that people have to want to have it act as a catalyst, and the main thing there is that I think the rise of social media has been very instrumental in a lot of these changes, because now you can interact with people who you otherwise never would have met in your life. And that's one of the great things about Twitter, about Facebook, about the internet, is you can interact with all these other people. One of the really terrible things about the internet and Twitter and Facebook is that you can interact with some people. And the other real issue is the fact that you can lock yourself in an echo chamber where the only thing you surround yourself with are people who agree with you. And that's, you get so focused in on this one tiny little box that you don't realize there's a whole other world surrounding you of all these other different viewpoints. And that's what, as people, we need to realize with social media, is that it can be a very powerful tool, but we have to be social with it. We can't just follow those we agree with and call it a day. We have to get every viewpoint and then work to find, okay, what is the truth? Where is the source bias in this? Where was this information drawn from? Does this logically make sense? Even if it's from a person I've supported before, is what they're saying now making sense? Does it rationally work? Because if you don't approach your views with, basically with scientific scrutiny, if you don't take into account the fact that you might possibly be wrong when new information comes to light, then you're not going to be able to make rational decisions, because you're going to get locked into this idea that only the things you surround yourself with are right, everything else is wrong, and that's not a correct viewpoint. You have to allow for the fact that you might be wrong. So getting back to the original question, I think these changes are probably close. I mean, we'll probably see a football player come out, at some point in the next 3 to 4 years, just because society is moving in that direction. But at the same time, it's something that you can't really guarantee, just because it depends so much on the person involved, on the team involved, on the city surrounding them. It's a lot like in Asimov's Foundation series, where you can, with psychohistory, you can predict what large groups of people can do, but you can't use that for individual cases. And that's really the thing, is that society as a whole is trending in a moderately good direction, but you can't use that to isolate single people and say this is going to happen or this is going to happen at this exact time. You have to create that surrounding environment to let those things happen and let people know that is a possibility. So good question. I haven't taken you this side of the room back. Whichever one has good games. I mean, yeah, or both. It's the thing I really liked seeing was Xbox One backing away from the always on connection, because that is essentially you don't own what you buy, which to me really takes away from, being a consumer. Is that if you're merely renting the things you're supposed to be owning, what happens when they turn the servers off? You don't control your information. And that's something to get it to a broader aspect, is that as a society so dependent upon information, whether it's your Facebook posts, whether it's your phone calls, whether it's your emails, the fact that right now, our government is collecting that information and using it to, essentially keep track of people, is using it to figure out patterns. We have to know what they're doing with that data. It has to be, if citizens are transparent, the government has to be transparent. Corporations have to be transparent, because And the thing is that you have to have that transparency on both sides, because again, it's like an equation. If one side is transparent and the other isn't, you have those forces pressing against each other until finally something gives. And you have people who are in position to take advantage of that information, and you don't know what they're going to do with it. So like for right now, with the whole PRISM thing, with the NSA, all the spying they're doing, they may be using it with the best of intentions, but they are creating a system where 10 years, 15, 20 years down the line, someone may come into power that does not have the best of intentions, and they have a tool at their disposal that can be very, very harmful if used the wrong way. So that's why we always have to be looking at, okay, who is collecting this information, and more importantly, what are they using it for, and who are they giving/selling it to? Because without that, you don't know what other people are going to do with your life. I mean, it's really either both sides have to be obscure or both sides have to be transparent. There is no other way without bringing forth conflict. Again, it's equality. So, other questions? Yeah.
I applaud your passion and your outspokenness.
Oh, thank you.
That's great. I was really struck by your, and I don't remember exactly your comment after the shootings in Connecticut.
The Newton ones. Yeah, so essentially, that I think that's one of the pieces in the book. The question was the comment after the shootings in Connecticut, and that's one of the pieces in the book called Bang Bang. And what it is that right now in our society, we cannot have a discussion on gun control. We don't have the ability to have that discussion because both sides are so entrenched on either no guns or all guns, and there's no room to meet and speak about the fact that, yeah, some guns are useful. You know, there are guns that are useful for hunting, family heirlooms, you know, keeping varmints and pests under control. But at the same time, this idea that you need an AR-15 to protect yourself from your government, when your government has tanks and drones, it's really not very rational. I mean, if the government wants to oppress you, they're going to oppress you. You're not going to be able to resist that with a gun. What you resist that with is by educating the people in government why oppressing people is a bad idea. That's how you prevent the government from oppressing you, is education. And we have to be able to have that conversation that, you know, certain guns and certain gun accessories simply are not good things to have in civilian life because their only purpose is to kill people very, very rapidly. And that's not, civilians should not have access to something like that because they're going to use it to kill people very, very rapidly. And it may only be one person, two people, three people, every year, but those are things that we should try to avoid. Those are things we should try to be changing because we wouldn't want that to happen in our neighborhood. We wouldn't want that to happen in our community. And we also have to respect the fact that there are people for whom guns are important, and they do use them for legitimate uses. They are responsible with their guns. They take care of their business, and those people have the right to be able to live their lives free and be able to use their guns responsibly. So we have to be able to meet in that middle ground and talk with each other that, look, we need to figure this out because right now we're not getting anything done. If we can't even have the conversation, if we keep putting it off each time, wait for passions to die down, or wait for the next one to happen. Well, the next one's just going to keep happening over and over and over, and nothing's going to happen. We have to be able to look at it and say, this is something that has to change, and we have to change it. So it's going to be tough, but that's most discussions are tough. So yeah.
The common thread you have is we need to keep having these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
We need to educate, and we as individuals need to learn whatever it is we are most passionate about, whether it's gun control or education or history, comment about history and governments failing. The history books that I grew up with didn't tell me the truth.
Right. Yeah, no, well, history's written by the victors. It's
And they edit what they choose.
Mm-hmm.
So how do these conversations, how does the bigger picture, what's your ideal thought about how these conversations start, or blossom, or grow, to talk to the people that don't understand?
That don't understand? Okay. Yeah, so the question is, how do you have conversations, and how do we actually effectively make change? And to me, it comes down to, we need enough people right now to realize that for our education system to work properly, you don't need to teach rote memorization. You don't need to teach dates and facts, because you can look those up. What you need to do is teach people how to do an effective Google search and how to recognize source bias. Because if you can do that, this right here will tell you everything in the entirety of human history. You can learn anything you need to know. And we have to teach people that you're in school to learn. You have to learn how to learn. And that means recognizing, when an argument is illogical, when someone is arguing, ad hominem or an attack on reason. And that's something that we don't teach in our schools because it's very hard to quantify that. We can't say, put this on a test and we know that someone has learned how to learn. No, you have to have teachers who are engaged with their students, who have the time to be engaged with their students, and whose classrooms are small enough so that they can engage with every student. And that means and the thing is that's very hard for us to do right now, again, because it's very hard to quantify that. When you're passing a budget, it's very hard to say, okay, these teachers are teaching their kids how to learn really well because there's no test scores you can go to look for that. That's just something you have to learn. You have to be able to look at and say, okay, given this problem, I can figure out a way to solve it, based on the tools at my disposal. So, yeah, that's the main one. Okay, yeah, one more question. All right. Oh, okay. All right. I was going to do celebrity deathmatch, but we'll let the little kid. Favorite movie. All right. That's a good final question. It's a deep one. So the question was, what is my favorite movie? And it's a really, really bad movie, but I really, really love it because I watched it a ton when I was a kid, and it is the David Lynch version of Dune. It's an awful, awful movie, but I love it so much. It's just cheesy sci-fi, just spectacular. So yeah, that is my favorite movie, and you can heap whatever vile insults on my head you want because they are all deserved. So yeah, so thank you everyone for coming out. Thank you the 501st, and yeah, we'll do some book signings. Thank you. All right, good. You wanna go there? Okay.